Hi again. It's Nate again, and it will continue to be Nate every time this happens, every episode. So get used to it. Viva Las Vegas, a beautiful traffic jam and hallucination exercise brought to you by Santa, apparently, because the very beginning you hear what sounds to me every time like ho, 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 ho. By the way, this is our example from Andrea. Sorry, I'm talking over it. All right, let's take another look at that because I was rudely interrupting the beginning of this whole deal. The third shot of the project is where things start to happen. I pointed out to a lot of you in the feedback that it's a fairly common thing to forget to mask out this light post. And I think we will see an example of somebody who forgot to do that, it's very common, so don't feel too bad if you forgot. Andrea has masked out our light post, which is one of the nice little touches that helps to kind of convincingly give the illusion that the video that you've composited is actually in the space. We've got a bit of blurring going on the top of the billboard that's not looking 100% right, but we will live with it. This isn't really the place to critique anyway. Alright, here's our money shot. Here is where things are going on. This is a pretty straightforward version of this shot. We've got our sign, we've got our background elements, we've got the tiger sitting perched on the billboard. It looks really nice. And that there is the one little glitch here in the bottom left hand corner of the water that's in front of the bus, which shouldn't be happening, but that's also not a super noticeable thing on the first watch. Color balance is working pretty nicely across the frame. Oh, the tiger is losing his nose here for a second, so I guess we gotta look out for that. Okay, and on this last shot, I believe this was one of the examples of somebody giving up on the money partway through because they'd already devoted so much time to trying one method, which I think most of you opted to try with the roto brush and then discovered that that was a really bad thing. Meaning, the roto brush is not a bad effect, but it is very limited in its usefulness. It's really only good for hair, at least in my experience. Something that's rapidly moving and changing shape, like the dollars, like the dollar bills, that is going to drive you insane if you try to do it. And I think many of you actually did try to do it, so I guess I'm talking to a bunch of insane people now, because good grief, that is an awful, awful, awful thing to deal with. So I think most people ended up opting for manual masking. It's a lot of work, but in some cases it's still like the best way to go. Alright, I'm liking what Andrea's done with the background. There's a nice blur going on. It's integrated well. Masks along the car are pretty good. Other than the money, this shot is working really well. So good job to Andrea. Moving on. Okay, Audra has a nice little surprise waiting for us. Let's just watch hers through. Well, did you see it? Our friend El Tigre is riding on the bus, which I think is a delightful idea and a fun way to play with our dream sequence shot here. Very nice. One of the things I like about this example is the kind of subdued colors. It's kind of a turquoise, like a pale turquoise blue and a coral pink palette, which kind of makes me think of film from like the 60s. Our Vegas sign is maybe a little bit dark here, but I'm not too concerned about that. The integration of the foreground and background, there's a little fringing on the leaves here. That could be tightened up a little bit perhaps, but it's a very small detail in a very insignificant portion of the frame here. And our money roto is on the money, I would say. That looks really nice, and the background, again, appropriately blurred and overexposed, because we're dealing with the interior of a car, which is a shadowy area next to a desert, sunny exterior, so it will definitely be brighter outside than it is inside the car. So this composite is really well done in that regard. Nice stuff. Oh, on this shot, the shot of the guy, I guess it's the second instance where you slow it down, there is a frame blending thing that Mark talked about. As we're seeing, it's not super smooth here. We're getting a lot of like ghosting, doubling frames. It looks kind of funny. Let me show you a little trick. So I've got that same footage loaded up in After Effects. I've slowed it down. This is the footage playing without frame blending. It's just a little bit choppy because it's at kind of a low frame rate. If you're not seeing the option for frame blending, if you go to the bottom left and you toggle these icons, and sometimes if you're like me, you have to toggle like all of them to remember which is which, because I don't just remember. Anyway, frame blending looks like a piece of film. If you click it once, what you're going to get is the effect that we saw in the example I was just looking at, where you've got some ghosting, you've got some weird, like, I don't know if it's just like fading between frames. Doesn't look great. But if you click the option one more time, you would think that it would just be a toggle on and off. But no, you've got a second option with this little arrow, and it's like it's a pixel blending thing, and it's black magic, because all of a sudden that looks so much better. So when you've got subtle movement, you don't have a whole lot of quick rotation or parallax. In the case of a shot like this, where it's just a little bit of a movement of the head, this pixel blend works miracles. So just wanted to point that out, because that's kind of a theme across a lot of the submissions, is that I'm getting the sort of like fading look, which is better than, I guess, nothing. But if you click on that toggle a second time, it'll improve your life immensely. Okay, so Audra's example was very nice. Loved the tiger. Now we will see what Darren has to bring.
Move, move, move!
There goes Santa again. Move, move, move.
We know. You'd rather be in Vegas.
Alright, so Darren has made some bold choices here. He's definitely thought outside the box. First of all, we're a little bit closer up to our subject, which I like in these opening shots. This one, I'm very proud of Darren here. Thinking outside the box. You don't have to constrain yourself to the billboard if you're doing a fantasy billboard anyway. And so he just bumped up the height, used like the full height of the video, which allows you to see more of these magnificent fountains, which if you've ever been to Las Vegas and seen the Bellagio fountains, they're actually super impressive. So we've got a taller billboard, got a little bit of a beveling effect here, which is looking pretty nice. It's a little exaggerated. It makes the object look maybe a little smaller than it needs to, but I like where you're going with that, Darren. And there's a little bit of a texture to the billboard too that I'm noticing, kind of a grid thing, which I didn't notice on a smaller version of the video. So it's looking really nice. So we've got our taller billboard, which also fills more of the frame, the full frame of what we're looking at. So it calls more attention to itself. It also kind of occludes this ugly second billboard back here, which is really distracting. So, really like this shot. Alright, this is where Darren has really decided to just do his own thing and make it his own. I like the integration of the Vegas sign very prominently here in the front, and it's looking nice. The roto cutting out the lights, it's, you got a little bit of a fringe here. You could maybe tighten that up, but it's not super noticeable unless you pause it and like you're looking for it. So that's nice. The color balance here on the top right is a little bit blue-green compared to the rest. Everything else is a bit more purpley. The sky replacement is very dark. If it's the middle of the day, the sky is not going to look that deep blue, unless you're wearing like polarized sunglasses or something. The billboard here is an interesting choice. Vibrant and eye-catching for sure. I kind of like that grid, that digital grid thing going on still. And the tiger is gigantic sitting up here on top. The glow in the middle of the midday sun is a bit much. I don't know. There's a lot going on. And I applaud the bold choice. Okay, Mark. What has Mark brought us? Alright, Mark has brought us a very desert sun-washed color scheme. Things are more bleached, they're warmer. I like the look. Straightforward job with this shot. The color of the billboard is kind of washed out, it matches the rest of the scene quite nicely. And if you'll notice, he's gone from a static shot or even a zoom to like physically pushing in the camera. You can see a little parallax between the foreground and the background if you're looking at either this corner of the frame or this corner of the frame, it's most obvious, but as I rock it back and forth, you see there's some movement going on, which is definitely a unique take here, because we're like floating toward the vision of Vegas, I guess. There are some color imbalance things, mostly because the bottom is so warm and vibrant, and the top is a little bit more desaturated. And like I get the atmospheric perspective, you want things in the back to fade a little bit and the blacks to not be so black, so that looks great with the Bellagio, and it's working here. This is still maybe a bit more saturated than I would like, the bus. And the billboard perhaps has a bit too much atmospheric haze over it. Mostly, I say that mostly because it's the focus of the frame, so I'd probably bring those black levels back down so it's a little darker, so the black of the billboard matches a little more closely with maybe the tiger stripes, just so it has more contrast to stand out from the hotel itself. And it matches maybe something that's coplanar with it, like the building here that's got the deep blacks. It's subjective, but I think that as far as catching your eye and drawing your eye to the center of the frame, that would be helpful. That's nitpicking a little bit because this shot is really looking nice, and that parallax stuff definitely would have taken some extra time, so way to go the extra mile there. I like the fact that the sky, the clouds are moving really quickly. It kind of adds to the fantasy element of the whole thing. Solid roto here at the end, and the background here is perfectly integrated, overexposed with the bokeh blur. Looks really nice. So solid work, Mark. Okay, what do we have here? Robert, what have you brought us?
We know. You'd rather be in Vegas.
Okay, looks like we got a little bit tired of the roto here. You're definitely on the right track, but I think you haven't keyframed as thoroughly, because I mean it's a lot of keyframes. It's a lot, especially if you've already tried like 3 different methods. But we've got a good blurred background, good integration there. The shot reads a little bit dark to me, but the color cast is fairly consistent. It's just kind of a greenish thing going on. So the Vegas sign is a bit dark. I'd probably get rid of the palm trees. That would be a little bit cleaner. The billboard's fairly desaturated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because video on a billboard can be whatever it is. So, but I think maybe preserving a bit more of that color would help draw our attention to it a little bit more. Here's an example of the light post not being masked out, and Robert, you're not the only one to do this. I'm not trying to call you out, but the light post here is supposed to be in front of the billboard, so that's the sort of thing that sometimes you miss. That's why I'm here, to point that sort of thing out. I like the border on the billboard here. It kind of grounds the video in a physical object, which I think works. Yeah, again, we are early in this course, so a lot of these things you will look back on in a few weeks like, oh yeah, I would definitely do that differently, or there's an easier way to do that. So there's a lot that's good, some things that could use improvement. What else is new? Moving on, we've got Ryan.
We know. You'd rather be in Vegas.
Alright, so Ryan's done a couple things that I am a fan of here. First off, he's cropped in a little bit, so we're definitely focused more on the billboard itself in this first shot. These feathered edges on the video aren't really doing it for me, mostly because physical objects don't have feathered edges, so to have the billboard be feathered is not quite working for me. But that isn't really the focus of the shot. So yeah, just knock the feather down on your mask a little bit, and this shot starts working even better. A fun touch here is as our character is looking to the right, Ryan has added a little bit of a whip pan to sort of match the guy's vision as he looks over. Ryan has gone with a bit more blur in the background. Although physically a blur like that, it would be really hard to achieve if you're talking about the distances involved and like a physical camera. I like the placement of the tiger down below. That's kind of fun. We also have kind of a rosier color palette, which is fun. And this little, just the subtle, simple animation of the logo at the end is a really nice professional touch. Background is well integrated. The roto on the head needs a little bit of work. We've got some edges, some edge contamination that I'd clean up. But the roto on the money is looking very nice. A lot of good stuff going on here. Okay, our last example for the day comes from Stone. Alright, so there is a lot going on here. Noticeably, we've got some camera moves, a little bit of a snap zoom going on, which use snap zooms judiciously. They're not always the best, but they're working pretty well, and it definitely brings your attention to the center of the frame. Kind of a fun addition of some text here, which I would say it's a little bit cheesy, but we're talking about Vegas here, so cheesy doesn't exist. And I like the fact that the billboard is a little bit more washed out toward the edge. It kind of looks like a natural glare from a sunlit day. From a compositing standpoint, that's a really solid look. The text adds a bit more story. Oh, the second zoom feels a bit unnecessary. If I were to get rid of any of the zooms in this piece, it would be the second one. This is kind of a fun effect, having it out of focus and kind of going in and out, almost like you're blinking your eyes and trying to understand this mirage, this vision that's appeared in front of you. And yeah, the text is kind of fun, a fun addition to the piece. Really nice integration of the Vegas elements, and getting rid of that second building from the original footage gives you a little bit more room to play with your Vegas Caesar's Palace and the Eiffel Tower and stuff. So this looks really nice. Little green in the shadows here at the bottom. Not super worried about that. This is an opportunity to introduce some of that atmospheric perspective, by which I mean you pull up the black levels so the blacks in the background are not quite so dark, which gives you that illusion that there's, you know, particulate matter in the distance. Because you look at things that are really far away, nothing is ever completely black in the distant background. Just because of things in the air, you know, little particles that reflect light. The farther away you get, the less profound the blacks can be. But I really like the originality of this take. Stone has done a really good job here. And the roto looks pretty good on the money. And the background is appropriately overexposed and blurred. I love that. The edge of the car here is perhaps too blurred. I would keep those masks a little bit sharper because the car itself is still in focus, or should still be mostly in focus. But yeah, I like the desert color scheme. I like the camera moves are a little crazy, a little exaggerated, but they're not bad, and they really add to the piece, and they kind of go along with the kitsch that is Las Vegas. So that's it. The tracking mark is more of a place to celebrate the good work you've done. If I get in the weeds with the details, forgive me, I'm sometimes still in like the critique mode, because that's what I have to do a dozen times a day. I really like what you guys have been submitting, and I hope to see just as many submissions next week.